Hello, everyone. We should just get started shortly. Just please bear with us for a couple of minutes. Okay, we'll get started. Afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our webinar on harnessing digital intelligence for B2B growth. I'm Anant, CEO of Chiworks, and it's a pleasure to have you all here today. Uh, so we thought long and hard about what we want to do, what we want to talk about this webinar, and one of the things that's everybody talks about is data, and how we're using data for B2B in the B2B context in terms of marketing, in terms of product, in terms of driving attributions, measuring ROI. Everybody wants to do things better, right? And we've been and there is plenty of data available. There's a plethora of tools, and each business has in its own unique way figured out or trying to figure out what works for them and which doesn't. And as an agency operating in the B2B space, data is central for us to deliver value as well. And we thought it'd be great to look at, get different perspectives on how data has evolved over the last few years. What are the key challenges in terms of harnessing this data, and how can we leverage that intelligence that's available today, to really drive growth. So in that context, I did want to kind of introduce our two panelists today. So we have with us Anupam Singhi. Anupam is Chief Executive Officer of William & O'Neill and William O'Neill Capital Management India. Anupam, of course, was one of the starting members of O'Neill in India, and then has scaled that to a company that's now 400 plus people. And I'll let him talk more about what he does. Dhruva is the SVP of Marketing and Head of Strategy at Rocketium. Rocketium, for a lot of you might be familiar with, is a very key SaaS platform in the creative space, streamlining creative processes for large companies. And Dhruva is somebody who comes in from a marketing standpoint, and particularly growth marketing standpoint. So we're hoping to get two different perspectives. Anupam with his product, a CXO perspective on data and business overall, and Dhruva certainly from in the growth marketing context on what and how we can harness data. So Anupam, if we can start with you, tell a little bit. I know I introduced you, but a quick little bit on yourself and William O'Neill, and then give us a sense of data and how it's core to your business a little bit. And after that, Dhruva will go with you.
Yeah, thanks, Anant, and thanks for inviting for this webinar. So I actually work for a company called, our parent company is called Data Analysis Incorporation. So, and it is a 60-year-old company founded by William O'Neill himself. He's a very well-known investor. He has written books on stock market. And you can see from our name, Data Analysis, 60 years back, he had a vision that data and analysis will be key for success in the stock market. And if you short, it's actually called DAI. So it also has an AI in it. Of course, at that time, it didn't mean AI. But point is, we use a lot of data. Our culture is for every decision making, we use data. And in India, we are carrying that legacy. We are now 11 years. We have set up two businesses in India. One is MarketSmith India product suite, where we provide both B2C and B2B customers cutting edge research on an Indian stock market. And what we really do is we do a lot of data analysis and take out all the noise from the data and really provide the factual information, the research and then analysis and the ideas for the market to the retail investor. And we educate a lot. And these products are highly regulated products because we are a registered advisor with SEBI. So you need to kind of provide this in a very compliant and regulatory environment. We also run a fund called, it's a only fund, it's an AIF category 3 fund. And when I say it's a completely algorithmically entire thing is managed through computer. There's no human fund manager who's managing the day-to-day operation. The investing decision, the buy and sell decision are actually done using the data. Of course, the team who developed this is humans, and these are some of the best talent available in the market who work on this cutting edge work. But in day-to-day work, the investment decisions are made through using the data. So as a culture, we have been, we were the early adopter of, whether you look at in 1960, we had COBOL programmers, we were screening the US data to identify stocks. We were the initial buyers of IBM mainframe. So we continue on that journey. And with the AI predictive analytics, we are just continue to invest in this data journey. So we are not from the camp which are not that AI and the data will become a problem. We are a camp that this will be an enabler for all of us in the future.
Sure. Thanks for that. Dhruva, how have you seen in your role? Tell us a little bit about Rocketium, of course, and tell us a little bit on what has happened. Have the principles changed? How have you seen this evolve story as a long-time growth marketer?
Sure. First of all, thank you, Anand, for having me on this webinar. I think it's a very relevant topic given today's times and all the technology disruption that we're seeing in the B2B space. So really look forward to this discussion with you and Anupam. So thank you. A bit about myself. I've been in the B2B technology space for the last 20 years, working across IT services, internet, and SaaS product companies. And I spent the first part of my career, which is the first decade, in mid-sized to larger companies where it was more structured environments where you learned the ropes. Whereas the second decade was largely with startups at various stages of growth, where data was at the heart of everything we did. We had to move fast, take quick decisions. And that's why this topic was very relevant to me. Hope to share some learnings from the past, if they are still relevant. But what I do currently is at Rocketium, I lead the marketing function. And what we do at Rocketium is help marketing and design teams across large e-commerce marketplaces, brands, and agencies to take a design to market. And the entire creative process that is behind it, right? Right from ideation to actually creating that visual that goes out, making sure it's in different formats and sizes to fulfill the needs of today's consumers. And then, of course, taking it live and getting the analytics back into the system so that your future campaigns are far more richer, enriched with the sort of holistic data to help these design and marketing teams to take informed decisions. Right. So that's a bit about me, a bit about Rocketium. You asked me, Anand, about has the principles changed of go-to-market? The answer is no. I think the pillars are still the three pillars which have always guided us to come up with a go-to-market. We first of all need a market definition. Who's your buyer? Which industries do they belong to? Who are the personas? How do you cater to this market? How big is this market, right? You need to understand that first. Second is, what message will you take to this market, right? What's the value proposition? What is that problem you're solving for them? That needs to be clearly articulated and understood. And why do they need to buy it? Why do they need to buy it now? The third, of course, is the tricky part, which lies with marketing, is taking this message to market at all stages, right? Right to reach these people, reach these audiences, to convince them to buy, to stay with you, to stay happy, right? So these principles don't change. I think they have remained intact. But what has changed is how you go about doing each one of this has been transformational, especially in the last 3 to 5 years. And there are some examples I can talk about today during this conversation, but I'll leave it to that and set the floor. Yeah.
Sure. Thanks so much. So Anupam, let's kind of look at if your journey and more recently, and over the last 2 3 years, from a data standpoint, I know your products are so innately data driven. Your platforms, your very business, your equity research business is so data driven, right? So when you see data and data of value, and how are you seeing that? What is the how do you prioritize that? What are the kind of platforms that are available for you, and I don't mean technology platforms necessarily, for you to kind of data platforms that are available for you to to kind of tap into? Is this something that you actively build yourself? How do you see that strategy playing out for yourself?
Yeah, no, in investing, you use a lot of data, and we source some of the data. We buy a lot of data from third parties. Now, what has happened over a period now, data is accessibility to data has improved so drastically. You are able to get data, parse data, able to find all kind of alternate data so quickly and easily, and that has also created data abundance. So you need to figure out what you really need. Sometimes it's so much of noise, especially in investing. Your aim is to actually take out the noise, and you really want to find the relevant data. And also, in investing, you talked about value. Where we value the data is, data will have only value if it's accurate, timely, and complete. If any of them is not there, data is of no use for us, because if you don't get a timely data, you're already late, right? Market has already digested that information. It's too late for you to even act on that. If it's not accurate, you might end up taking wrong decisions, which can be painful for the customer, painful for your own investing. So accuracy, completeness, and this has been so I'll give you an example. In my previous organization, we were the largest data collection company, correct? And I was the globally managing the data collection for financial statement data. So every company globally has to report annually and quarterly their financial statement. And if you go a few years back, to collect that information, we used to have a team manually collecting that information, keying in that data into a standardized format so that you can consume, the buy side and sell side can consume the data for their analytics. And it could take months because it was a footnote data. Some of the data is deep inside the annual reports, which is stuck in a footnotes. To capture all of that data, it can take months and weeks for some of the companies which are low priorities and certain markets which are not high priority. Now all that gets done in seconds with artificial intelligence. Not only you are able to extract that data, put it in the database, but you're able to run analytics on it on a real-time basis. So data, it continues to have the same principle as Dhruva mentioned. Principles have not changed. You still want the accurate, complete land, but the scale and the real-time nature of it has drastically changed in our business. And when we are designing our algorithm, we have to continuously keep a pace with that speed. We need, and the alternate data and other things are, some of the data has issues, correct? Like news, we need to capture news, and news can be fake news. How do you filter it out? How do you ensure? A lot of our data, stock market data, actually come from public sources, so it's easily available. But then there are players, the third party, who really clean it up for you, who maintain it in well, because there are a lot of principles in our data we need to follow, that it needs to be point in time. It doesn't need to have survivorship bias, correct? Only, if you have those problems, data, it will be highly biased, and you'll end up taking wrong decision. So yeah, it is critical in our business. So we spend a lot of money managing this data, buying this data, and continuously upgrading. So our biggest spend is actually a data in our company.
Yeah. So it's interesting, right? And the stock, I remember chatting with you a little before the webinar started, and you were mentioning about how the stock market itself is a very unique target segment, right? And people who deal with stock markets in general, people who trade, it's a small segment in India as a market, right? And one of the things is that, you obviously worry about how do you reach this market, right? What is the kind of intelligence that you need to kind of tap into this market, acquire more customers? Stock markets go up and you get more customers, stock markets go down and you lose customers, and it's a very dicey thing. So I'd like to take that to Dhruva. So Dhruva, when you think of market reach and using intelligence for market reach, right? Uh, how do you kind of do it? Let's say you're targeting some company in the mid market space. How do you think about this? How do you, what are the pieces that start to fall in place? How do you kind of visualize this?
Yeah, I think, see, like in any sort of B2B setup, as I said, the three pillars don't change. When you look at the market and today, the tools that you have access to, the data that you have access to, and Anupam also mentioned, most of the data today is available. It's very easily accessible, right? And now we have tools that are built on top of it to, actually give you the answers like with a few clicks. For example, if you, as you said, say for a B2B proposition, you have a mid-market audience for belonging to a certain industry, and a certain set of roles, titles make sense as your ideal customer profile. You could go to these tools with a few clicks. You're ready to go from day one. That's your TAM, right? You have your TAM on day one. There is no long research. Of course, this will improve over time, refine over time, but you don't need to wait for 2 months to get this data, right? Your team can get started. Now, once you have this data, you want to launch programs to reach out to them. And that's where I would answer your question of how digital intelligence today is helping in different aspects, right? Let's look at one. Now I want to reach this customer base. I'm thinking of a campaign. And when I do that, more often than not, uh, it's the design team's intuition or the marketing team's intuition that goes into creating this, say, ad or visual or creative that comes out, right? And there is only subjective biases there. There is no way to say, hey, this will work or this will not. Right? Maybe your boss says this will, and that's why you do it, right? But take an example of, say, Chiworks. You want to run a white paper campaign on LinkedIn, right? And you have different kinds of people. You want to go after different industries, and maybe the creative elements need to change. But there's no way in the past to tell you, hey, these creative elements will work. Should you put the white paper alone? Should you use a dark background? Should you use the font X or font Y, right? But today you have the tools to actually tell you, hey, for this objective and for this kind of a segment, this is the best composition of a creative that will do well, right? I mean, otherwise you just relied on intuition. This is not to say that human intuition will get replaced. It's just that it further makes it more powerful, makes intuition more powerful, and makes it more data driven, right? That's one example. The second example is, which is more, which I've seen in the last 2 years at Rocketium, is we run a lot of LinkedIn campaigns, right? And from a measurement perspective, let's take that white paper example further, right? Say I have launched the white paper campaign and I'm not getting any conversions on LinkedIn. I'm not seeing any results, right? Then you would go to your marketing person and say, hey, let's do something about this campaign. Let's put a native LinkedIn form. Let's not drive them to our download page on the website. And you still don't see any difference, right? And maybe you do. But at the end of the day, what you're not able to see is the LinkedIn campaign truly effective, right? You're able to measure that only with the data you get on platform, which is LinkedIn. But what about all the off-platform data, right? So today you have tools that tell you if people are exposed on LinkedIn, which is an ad exposure, to your ad, they could organically come to your site, separate route, a separate channel, right? And download the same white paper or reach out to you with further interest. And today you have tools to correlate this. And that is very powerful, right? Because then you're making a very holistic decision on whether something is working or not, right? So two examples there, one on creation, which has been enhanced with understanding creative elements and attributes to help with human intuition, and two, just on measurement, just gives you a more holistic picture on if something is working or not.
Yeah. So I think attribution is definitely, I think, one of the big challenges I think marketers have been solving for ages, right? And I know we've made significant progress, but we aren't there yet in terms of the ideal solution. But I think definitely it is getting better in terms of what you can do, and some of the capabilities that are coming in now, are very, very significant. So if you think about measurement, Anupam, is how much of a challenge? What is the challenge in your world, right? When you look at data, you look at measurement of success. Are there frameworks that you apply? Like you said, a lot of data is available. How users behave, what happens. What is the challenge that you have in terms of actioning this? What is the big problem, big question that you're trying to answer?
Yeah, no. First, if you can't measure, you can't control and improve. Correct. So measurement is always important, and also measurement is, what kind of measurement. Of course, we are talking about here in terms of customer acquisition or customer engagement. Uh, One is, I think benchmark is. I think Dhruv also mentioned. Sometimes benchmarking. You might feel that you are really doing a good job, but for and our industry is such a small industry, it's hard to do benchmarking because there are only 3 to 4% of India who really invest in stock market. Of course, there is a 97% potential investors, correct? But it's and many of them are taking mutual fund, correct, to invest. And eventually, if we are going to become a developed market, this number should go up. But what problem is that how do you ensure that numbers which you get from different platforms, what you're doing when you run a campaign, you get certain data, is that really accurate? How can you improve it further, right? uh, how are you doing compared to your competitors and others? We get some of that data through that, but it still becomes a really a also, it's we are driven by same set of things which you're doing in a different market regime. When market is going up, certain even worse campaigns tend to do well, but in a bad market, even your best and even spending more money doesn't help you, correct? So there are all those challenges, and we are finding it. Those are some of the challenges we try over period. We have tried to figure it out. We have added those variables into our system to improve our campaigns, improve how you need to convert your people from trial. And our marketing is continuously using all of that data, and that measurement really helps us. And in the today's world, I think it's such a dynamic world. If you don't keep looking at the data and keep improving on those things, you will find it hard. So we are, even in stock market, we see that if you don't continuously update yourself, you can't keep looking at data and find new ways of you will be obsolete. So we are continuously focusing that. We keep looking at, and there are now availability. Earlier we didn't have some of the things. Now I can easily figure it out how many customers we have who are totally novice, new customer who don't know the stock market, and how many customers are really expert in that. We can map their journey. We can figure it out where they are in the spectrum, and we can give highly personalized content to them. That's really amazing, what we can now get the data from these tools, and that is really helping us. But at the same time, you can continuously improve on that, and that's when you do so much of testing. And now testing tools are available as well. But these are
Yes.
all challenging things. You need to keep working on it. It's not one standard thing. You have done it and you have arrived. It just keep working on it. And I think we are getting better, but still have to crack a lot of this over time.
Sure. So, Dhruva, that's the big word, right? Personalization. In terms of, everybody talks optimization, everybody talks personalization, and you have to drive, it is the mantra, so as to speak. So how is that, working now with the data that's available? How much of it is a reality? How far can you go to personalize? There is obviously a very sales driven one-on-one personalization that can happen at a smaller scale. At large scale, while I think there are enough of AI tools that I know of that kind of offer personalization platforms, right? Where are we really in the personalization journey? Is there? Do we see? Are we seeing optimizations? Are you seeing optimizations in your role in terms of sales conversions, in terms of process flows and automation? How are you seeing effectiveness of personalization?
Sure. So I'll take the one-to-one personalization first, and how the digital intelligence that's available today has totally enhanced that experience, right? I mean, just take a look at a simple sales conversation that can happen with a prospect today. Uh, just the fact that you can go so well prepared to this call because there's enough information available about this company online through their reports. You know what their priorities are. The budgets come from either the CMO's office or the CTO's office. You know their priorities. You can get data very quickly from your own CRM uh, to inform, hey, these kind of decks have worked, these kind of presentations have worked, this kind of problems or value statements have worked for prospects like this. Right? So immediately your sales or BDR team has got all the ammunition possible to make the best sort of impact, right, when they have this conversation. And it's also personalized to the company they meet. But look at it one step further, right? You have this conversation with these people, and imagine all the conversation your entire sales team is having, right? In the end, you want to control that second pillar, the message, what is getting delivered, right? And today, with the tools that we have, you are very quickly, you don't just get the recording of these conversations, but you're also able to pull insights from these conversations because you get the transcripts, you get the keywords, you get what were the objections, what were the wow moments, what were the not so wow moments. And these are big inputs, not just to the sales team itself, but it's big inputs to product strategy, big inputs to business strategy, right? So this is at that one-to-one enterprise level personalization where just having this data, the digital intelligence, is just transforming the way, the efficiency with which one can operate. But even there, I would make one point. Some of this is reliant on what Anupam said, to have a very clean data source. As long as you have that clean data source, you can pull information in a timely way to make sure your sales team is very effective. On the other end of the spectrum, where you're talking about automation and workflows to ensure personalization happens, it comes down to how good your data is, how well the processes are defined, how well the systems are defined, right? Because if these systems are defined, the processes are defined, the data is clean, it's very easy to run a high fidelity, high volume, high variation personalization campaign today, right? uh, but it's just that the gaps lie in the systems, processes, and the data. And it's not really the tool set that's the problem, right? It could be as simple as discipline, simple as making the right entry. All of that comes in the way because one bad experience can, take you from a journey of where
Yes.
there's a personalization high to a big down very soon, right? So that's where we are. I think we have the tool set. We need the processes, the systems, and the input metrics to come in there.
So, so at scale, do you see an attribution challenge? Is there any challenge at all to be solved on the attribution side?
This is, yeah, I'll
Just
take
for
that.
you. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think attribution becomes more complex with that earlier example I gave you, right? When I spoke about how if I look at only LinkedIn data, I would think my LinkedIn campaign is not working. But if I look at my LinkedIn data and correlate that to something else that's happening in the same window, then I know it is super effective, right? So it's the same thing. Like we spend a lot of money on events, for example, right? Now events is like a physical event. Now, if at the end of the year, if I look at how much I've spent in events and then try to come up with an ROI sort of metric, it would be like it wouldn't read that well, right? It would be in the red. But during events, if I actually look at my organic data, it actually tells me there's a huge lift that comes in inbound traffic when I sponsor events, right? Now, how do attribution models factor for this multi-touch, multi-channel kind of marketing world? I think that's where the complexities lie. I don't think we're still there. We still need a lot of robust models to come in to make sure the true attribution is surfaced.
Okay. Okay. So what's so So, Anupam, one of the things that you spoke about was giving that personalization, giving that content to your audience as well. And one of the things that we actually measure at Chi is actually a share of voice kind of a scenario where you're talking to these people, right? And it's a step away from personalization, and we kind of use that as a base and then kind of drive personalization from there on, right? But even so, there remain challenges like Dhruva mentioned about you know attribution, at scale. There is still a certain content that's kind of required, and quality of content is still always very subjective. You could get a lot of relevance and how you deliver it. One bad experience, you have all of those plethora of challenges. So in your setup, in your whole thing, how has it worked for you? What's worked for you as a success when you think about data and data intelligence strategy overall? I mean, if you were to kind of pick maybe one or two things that has really worked well, what would that be?
So I think one of the real, which is on the personalization, which once we figured out how to figure out where they are in their journey, investing journey, correct? Are they a novice investor, first time, early investor, or they are the institutional investor, very well educated, advanced, and whole spectrum. And using that, once we started personalizing, for example, a novice customer, you might want to do a little more education, how he needs to, maybe a content needs to be a little more simplified, take out the jargon. At the same time, on the advance, you don't want to bore him with things which he already knows. So that when you try to meet your content according to them, and you can do that now because you know the behaviors, you know what kind of customer, where they are using your application, you get a lot of that data. And then once we figure that out, that all whole segmentation, personas, etc., and then deliver content according to that, for example, our conversions improved drastically, correct, from trial to premium subscription. We, in some of the cases, we have seen almost 50% increase, correct. Same with our premium basic to premium conversion. So, but having said that, it is a continuous work. You need to keep reiterating it. You need to figure out better ways to do it. It's not a once standard solution which will go forever. So we need to keep doing the testing. We do a lot of multivariate testing when we are launching our feature, when we are doing our content. We do same content we deliver in many ways and try to figure out which is working well. And something is working well for a while, then it doesn't work well. Correct. So you need to relook at it. So that's a continuous work, and I think that's the not a challenge, but that's a part of the job. I think you need to be doing this on a scale and real time basis so that you are not falling behind. And I think the biggest worry which I have all the time is status quo. Something is working and people just start believing that, oh, we found the holy grail and now let's just do it. And I've seen it multiple times that and then things start falling down again, right? So it's a continuous work, which it should be a process and a workflow which you are continuously measuring, continuously checking our assumptions are right or not. And I think that's what we are doing now, and I think it is working a little better. But it's a challenging market, the where we operate. It's not a large customer base. It's not an e-commerce. We are selling clothes. We are really selling research product. So it's a very different market. Over time, I think we are getting better at it, and we will it's a learning process, I think, for all of us. And as Dhruva mentioned, it's changing. New tools are coming. AIs are adding new things to the whole thing. So you need to keep yourself updated with the new way of marketing. Yeah.
Yeah. So Dhruva, so any sorry, you had something to add?
Yeah, I just wanted to add, I think one more thing I wanted to mention with personalization is the fact that, your structured data, which is on your CRM, the segments and cohorts, this play a very important role, right? I think structured data would be a great source to, automate at scale, right? So that's
Yeah.
very important to have, to make the most out of your structured data, even for small things, right? Which is even outside of personalization for B2B growth, especially. If you look at it, it's very important to understand, especially when you work with startups, right? What are the deals that are closing fast? What are the type of customers that are moving fast? What use cases are working, right? So the idea to close fast or even disqualify fast if that is captured well in your CRM, right, that's a gold mine of information for your business strategy, right?
Yeah, I mean, so one of the things, interestingly, that when we work with startups, we work with enterprises, and when we look at startups, startups are generally very casual about segmentation and how they go about, their targeting. It's a little bit of, uh, I know they need quick results, and they're always looking at quick results, right? And somewhere we feel that the foundational bits of all of this, right, which is getting your data sets right, which is looking at your segments right, getting your personas, and having these things in place allows you to scale so much better in your growth phase, right? And that's something that I think a lot of startups do miss out on. Something
Yeah.
that we actively engage, but like you rightly said, somebody who's done growth marketing all along, that's okay. Any couple of quick
I think another
key
thing I
things
want to
are,
add, you have a lot of data. There's so much data everywhere, right? Customer data, this data. And sometimes people think that we should all integrate all that and make this big super data and then do it. What I've noticed with that, it just takes too much time. It's, I think, okay to have multiple data separately sitting somewhere and do analytics. If you try to do this super data and try to do it with that, it just takes a long time, and you're really not time to take to deliver things becomes harder and harder, and databases gets bigger and bigger, and it become problem, and nobody uses it. A lot of data is sitting and nobody uses it, and nobody is discarding that. That's also another challenge.
yeah, I can see Dhruva nodding in complete acknowledgement there. I think in
Especially in when it comes to product telemetry, which is, once you have your customer, just understanding how they're using your product, right? I don't think there's enough. While the data still exists, right, you have all the events logged somewhere, nobody looks at it, but that data is again uh, super important, whether it be to inform your product team to work on a certain set of features for a particular roadmap, or even for pricing, right? This is, you will learn how to price your product best just based on how your users are using the product. But yeah, these are data that's sitting there but not really monetized or looked at.
I'll give
great.
you an example. We used to give economic data for free of cost. I'm talking about my previous company, free of cost with other data sets. And suddenly we realize that it's a lot of value. A lot of people are using that data, especially these high tech companies. They use that economic data to take their investing decisions, etc. High frequency. So we tried to monetize, and then we went to one of the company that we, and they said we already have it for free, correct? Because one of the sales guy was trying to sell it, and they said you already have. So you're right. All this was in big companies. A lot of that data is just sitting, and people don't know we should price that because there is a usage for that. You gave
Yeah,
it for free, but it looks like that is the most useful and most
valuable part.
uh, valuable thing, but you're not charging for it. uh,
Yeah.
but now, because at that time, I think those kind of data attribution, or which products people are with, it was not that easy. I think all that problem is solved now. I think those things are now going away, where you don't know what your customer are using. But I'm sure, in some companies, people might still forget to look at that data.
Yeah.
Okay, so before we kind of get to a little bit of Q&A, I'd like to invite some closing remarks from both of you. I think what we've kind of learned through this conversation, I think one is obviously it's a completely live process, of using data, learning from it, getting through it. We are seeing new capabilities emerge in terms of what AI and personalization and all of that brings, and a lot of it is getting embedded well into our workflows, platforms, and tools. So you may have to make the right choices there, etc. We're also seeing. We also spoke about the importance of staying agile and just getting to move on and not get stuck with the ideal, as Anupam said, super data. Wait for the perfect piece of information, get the campaign live, learn, and then kind of iterate over it and move on. And I think we also discussed a few challenges that exist. Like the was mentioning on top of the funnel, how it's kind of hard to solve that attribution challenge. But of course, at the other end of the spectrum, it brings in tremendous capabilities to optimize, right, at a one-to-one level and so on. So Any closing remarks? Anupam will go with you in terms of how what you want to leave our audience with in terms of data strategy. What's the tip that you would have to offer, and then Dhruva will go with you post that.
Yeah. No, only thing I will say, the fundamentals of data and analysis have not changed. We are doing it for 60 plus years. We believe you know, uh, while intuition is great, you should use a lot of data for your decision making. A lot of time you will realize, and I have realized multiple times that your intuition is wrong. You have biases. Everybody, stock market, especially when you're doing an investing, one of the things which we tell everybody, that get rid of your emotions and biases, just really look at data and take decision based on that. It's very hard. We all get, so as a culture in our company, for every decision, if you have the data and if you are able to collect the data and it's not costly to do that data, always try to use data for your decision making. uh, it's a paramount. So that's whether you, and all the companies, if you look at success, because we look at companies all the time for investing, if we really look at the companies which are successful, you will find a common thread. Whether you look at history, in fact, if you look at along the pre-industry, industrial revolution, even now, the companies which are really tend to do better, they are the ones who are really using the data well. They are making the decision based on data. They then tend to stay longer and they tend to perform better than the others. And people who, like, one day wonder, they just created a product which worked well for it, but they just become complacent. They come and go. But the company who stay longer are always using data. So my key takeaway as a company, and that's what we create, promote culture, and to the audience, I'll say, use data as much as possible. Of course, ignore the noise, relevant data, accurate data, complete and timely. That's the key. And I don't think so that is ever going to change, irrespective of how fast, how real time you get it. Those qualities still need to be there. Yeah.
Great. Um, so I'd encourage the audience to just leave questions for us. Dhruva, so parting notes from you. Closing remarks.
Sure. One takeaway from me is what Anupam mentioned. I really liked it. Data needs to be accurate, timely, and complete. I think that's that's what's required to make this work. But I would just leave with this, right? I think the playbooks of yesterday that we have all learned is irrelevant. I think whatever I've done in 20 years is probably irrelevant now. And the playbook for the future is now, right? I think we all need that mindset to leverage data and adapt continuously to this new world where access is easy and things can be done far more efficiently. Otherwise, we would all be stuck in those annual planning cycles, planning for the year, getting punched somewhere in the middle, and not knowing what else to do. Right. So I think it's this era of continuous evolution. We need the right mindset. I think the tools are already there.
Great. Thanks, both of you. Here are a few questions, and I'll just pull out some questions for you guys that we can possibly take for maybe about 5 minutes. So there's an interesting one on: do you think there's an area of B2B growth that you believe companies are actively overlooking? In the context of data, let's take that in the context of data. Is there a particular area where you feel this is like a greenfield opportunity and people are not looking at it enough?
I think one area where I've not seen B2B companies do a great job is with the existing customers itself, right? Understanding existing accounts, getting the account intelligence, knowing how big this account can become, not just with the team with which you're working with, but across the board. There are multiple other decision makers, right? And not just using that intelligence and making that a lever for growth by growing that business, but also leveraging those businesses to help getting new accounts. I think this is one big untapped area. May not be very relevant to digital intelligence, but it is intelligence, right? It's intelligence that could be mined by meeting people in the organization and farming it out.
It's even more interesting when Anupam, for you, right? In that sense, you really want a returning audience, right? And, that's definitely an
Yeah,
area
yeah.
that you're looking at. I mean, all your efforts
I
must be put on that. Yeah.
always, renewals are important. You want your customer to be with you. Also, upselling a deeper relationship with them. We also do a lot of B2B selling on research, and I told you there are instances where we see there were bigger opportunity we didn't tap into because sometimes they are using your product in a way, and you can show them another important features which they are not using, and your product might be replacement of some other, because people also want to cut their cost, right? If they're buying this, your product already has certain things which they're buying a separately another product. So especially in our research world, in the institution B2B, everybody's trying to cut the cost. They don't want to pay for research. They want to have less player. So upselling becomes a very important. Your customers who are happy with you, you can find ways to deeper your relationship. And also the account management. We realized, because we are 60-year-old, so we have legacies as well. There are legacy salespeople as well, account managers also, and they have certain ways to manage relationships, correct? Certain people still go the old way. We need to take them out, we have to have dinners, and then only it works, right? Then there are people who are really looking at what really works for my customer. What is the stocks he's holding in his portfolio? Which stock they do a little more research, and they do more, give them more personalized content. They call them at the right time, and that makes the whole difference, correct? They give you another broker vote, which gets you more money. So I totally agree that using the data and trying to get deeper with your existing customer is always a good thing to look at. Yeah.
So there's another question that's kind of very pertinent to what you were talking about earlier, Anupam, which is about where you gave the example of your company having dished out extremely valuable data to people for free, right? And the question really is about in these kind of scenarios when there is data sitting, and you may not often realize its true potential, and um, you know how do you how does a brand what's the best way a brand should think about utilizing this data? Is that content, Dhruva? That's maybe something we hear from you, but Anupam, from you first. Is how do you think about these data pieces that could be data sets that could be sitting with you, and how do you kind of tend to approach it? Is it about let's try this in this context, or do you say you empower somebody with that data and see what you can come out of it? How does one think about this as a brand?
Yeah, I can answer it in many ways. One is, of course, you should be aware what data sets you have. If you don't even aware who are using what content, how they are using, you will never figure it out. There is a content sitting and people are using and you're not monetizing it, or there is a content which is really of value but nobody is using it. For example, I'll give you an example. In our library, we have thousands of investing books, white papers. People have wrote about investment strategies, right? It's sitting there. And It's a great content. And in today's world, when you are doing building all these codes for these strategies, we've finally, one of the person figured it out that this all can be digitized and all can be converted into an intelligent data source, right? Every strategy can be actually codified, tested. uh, and a lot of time what happens is, in order to figure out these things, you really need a new talent who are aware of these things. A lot of time you have this talent which is not even aware that these things are available. You can do a very quick digitization of books, you can do this faster at scale. So I think that's another thing. You need to be fresh with your talent who can make you aware that there are new possibilities, correct? That you have this big data source which might be still in non-digital format, but if you digitize them and you do these things. We used to have 100 years of US pricing history. Pricing history
Mhm.
goes to 1840, sitting in the scanned newspaper, right? It can be valuable for some people, right? And we actually found a value in it. So we actually converted her into the full database. And there are people who, historians of market, people who like to do research of the 100 years old company, etc. They need all that data. And suddenly it became very valuable. So yeah, it's a continuously aware of what is sitting and how you can monetize. And it's not easy. Sometimes it's just an accident you figure out that there is something sitting. But if you can continuously look at your data, what is available and who is using and how you can monetize it, can help. And maybe there should be people who should be doing that work within your organization.
Okay. Okay. I think so. we nearly end, and I'll just probably take, one more question. So, okay, so Dhruva's back. So, Dhruva, maybe quickly I can kind of post that question to you in terms of, what I asked Anupam. How do you kind of, how does a brand kind of tackle that? Obviously from a growth marketing standpoint, do you channel that into content, or is that the only route? How else do you channel it?
Yeah, I think content is one area where you can use all this data. Especially, let's talk about product usage data, right? I mean, just knowing how your users use your product is a great blog post, right? I mean, you could come up with a great blog post just by understanding how your users are actually using the product. For example, while generative AI is all the talk, and people are generating images and all of that, we have that feature in the product. But there's another feature in the product which helps you with background removal, right? And that's the most used feature, right? So, but what people are actually doing in the product are things that they need on a very day-to-day basis. And when you take this thing that solves their daily problems, right, and very real problems, I think it makes your content that much more impactful. The second thing is, which I mentioned earlier, I think in terms of pricing, it plays a big role. In terms of offering premium features, when hey, these are the features that people use, you can just price it a little higher, right? Because people will find value in it. While for you internally, it's like, hey, that's like a table stakes feature, right? It's not the case. It's the value you bring to the table, and it helps you realize these things. So yeah, I think it feeds in both ends of the funnel, right from creating content to actually input to strategy and pricing.
Okay, we'll do a last question and then wrap this up. And it's an interesting question on, it's a probably around automation and where kind of you land up using automation. Interestingly, Anupam, you did talk about your product itself, which does a full automated transaction in that sense, right? There is an interesting use there in terms of the product itself. But in terms of data and automation, how much of automation is really there? Like you mentioned, there's still in your target market, there are these people who are senior, who are 40 plus as a buyer persona, right? They like the human touch. You like to kind of sit across the board, talk to people. You work with partners, with brokers, and all of this is a lot of personal touch. So how much of this data is automated? How much is it how much can you automate? Or is there a limitation in, let's say, in your domain in terms of what can be automated, what cannot? Maybe on the product side, it's fully automatable, but not so much on the customer interaction and that side.
No, I think we are very big on automation, and because one is, uh, there are certain cost issues when you are dealing with data. Certain data is so costly, and if you can't automate to collect it, it just becomes hard. It's of no use, because cost of data is also important. You need to keep it at minimum. We in certain places we do collect still data manually because it's hard to collect in an automated way. But with AI, what we are realizing is there is a whole lot of automation now possible, which was not possible many years ago, right? Because these were difficult data sources, interpretation, large language models are really required to collect the data. Also, how you deliver the data. Now we are able to write articles, content using different part of the content, which used to be written by an analyst, can be now written by an AI, right? Which is a large language model, which uses the same kind of framework how an analyst will write. So there is a lot of automation process. Also, like for example, we have people who manage money. They all the time have questions about the company. Suddenly, a company reports a news release. Suddenly, a lot of information about the company. They would like to quickly understand what's going on. How does it impact my stock, etc. Lot of automation is happening in that place. Again, while customer interaction, which you're talking about, one of the thing, I think there also, every interaction which we, also Dhruva mentioned, you are able to get that data. How many times you called, what did you discuss, how, and using that data and creating an insights, follow-ups, what you should share with them over time. All that is now getting automated over time, right? So uh, more and more digital conversation. And now because of COVID, after COVID, the travel has also decreased. We used to have our sales team travel around the world. Now that has come down. They need to do Zoom, And again, with Zoom, you can record the conversation. You get more insights about that, which has become, which, face-to-face conversation is always hard. So there is a lot of automation, and I think this automation will just keep increasing with this AI. What you can really do with voice, text, everything you can really, and then you can database it, run analytics on it. So I think it is going to just get better and better. I told you that 1,000 people were collecting financial statement data. Now you don't need that many people. You can just do it with few hundreds and do a much better, accurate job and faster collection than what you used to do with 1,000 people. So cost of collecting data is coming down drastically. So more and more focus should be on analytics, how you can derive more value out of it, what else you can do. And even the analytics is now getting automated, so much of it.
So,
Yeah.
Dhruva, for you, I know marketing and automation is very broad. There's a lot of things that are happening there. So just tell me the one new area of automation, and particularly coming from the creative process side of it, right? I'd love to hear, what is the big piece of automation there that's really driving value for brands, especially B2B brands. And you work with some of the best large B2B brands. So I'd like to hear about it.
Got it. So I'll just give a couple of examples here. One is what we do at Rocketium for our own sort of customer acquisition cycle. And this is a top funnel automation flow that we have. So the product review sites have been around for ages, like G2, right? And people go and research products, categories in these sites. But more often than not, these are in-market, high-intent prospects, right? Which your sales team and BDR teams usually want. And here is where we have a workflow, an automated workflow, which is super useful, where the minute someone who is researching on G2, which is your product or your page or your category page, comes to your site, there's an alert that is set up, which goes to your sort of BDR sales teams to immediately call them, right? I mean, just a very simple thing, but it's highly intelligent in the way that and efficient in the way that it works, right? Because these are in-market leads. So that's one. On the second example, when it comes to automation and the question you asked of how brands are using, I think today the content needs or the content that the brands need to produce to reach out to their customers with personalization, with multiple platforms, multiple formats, have become so huge that there is no easy way to do it, right? I mean, Photoshop wasn't built to create that many different forms of a creative asset or of a key visual. Photoshop was used to build one key visual, right? So I think that's where brands are leveraging Rocketium, where they have an idea and they want to take this idea in the most relevant way to different cohorts in different channels, in different sizes and formats, right? And Rocketium enables people with a lot of smart automation and AI to do that very quickly.
Got it. Got it. So great. Thanks so much, Anupam and Dhruva, for this conversation. Ton of learning for me, and and patiently answering some of the questions. I think it's been interesting getting two different perspectives, right? And how at the end of the day, there's a lot of common ground between what Anupam's doing and what Dhruva's been trying to do, even considering its marketing and a whole different financial world out there. Thank you so much again for your time, and we'll hope to see you again sometime soon. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Anand. Thanks, Anupam. It was a pleasure.
It was an absolute pleasure. Thanks, guys.